Yo, welcome back to another episode of On the Spot Sports. And before we get to our guest today, we have a big shout out for Living Sisu. Living Sisu is a platform and app that wants to give you all the tools to have success in your sport. Their main objective is to activate your lifestyle. So it's for active people. Enjoy discounts at companies like BioSteel, 30% off, Body Logics, the Goalie Guild. All his books are discounted. Roan, Lululemon for men, 20% off. Online stretching programs with Eccentrics, 1 full month free. They got super silent massage guns, 20% off those. And it's a great quality. It's way less expensive than a Theragun, and it's great quality. So there's so many more discounts that you guys will need to just become a member to see. So they want to provide you with anything you need for success. So come join the community. I'm a part of it. A bunch of other athletes are a part of it. So it's free to join. It takes 20 seconds to get exclusive offers to your sport, and it's definitely worth it. So do us a huge favor and go sign up for Living Sisu's membership. It's free, takes 20 seconds. So go do it, and we'll see you there. Living Sisu is a great company. We know one of the co-founders, Zach Fricali. He's a great guy. He's the co-founder. He does a lot of live streams on Instagram at Living Sisu, with a bunch of elite athletes, and you learn a lot from like the athletes' determination, their resiliency, everything to what made them become successful. So it's been a great experience so far. So go on. I'm gonna leave the link in the description. So go sign up.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of On Spot Sports. I'm Jack, and today's episode we are joined by a very special guest, former professional goaltender Ian Sylves. Ian spent time in multiple leagues ranging from the ECHL with the Atlanta Gladiators, SPHL with the Evansville Thunderbolts, Macon Mayhem, and the Roanoke Railyard Dogs, as well as stint in the Erste Liga for HK Budapest. Ian has also attended college at Buffalo State College for 4 years, playing college hockey, and played juniors in the NDJCHL, EMJHL, and the GOJHL, the GOJ. So this is gonna be a really fun episode and an episode of the making. So it's gonna be a good one. So welcome to the show, Ian Sylves.
Thanks for having me, Jack. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a while in the making, probably close to a year now. So it's good to get you on.
Finally. Yeah, finally made it.
Yeah, finally got some time where both of us could actually come on for a few minutes here and just talk goalie. And who doesn't love talking hockey?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome. We're not doing this for 3 hours because I could talk a lot all day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But to start things off, like how have you been? Like how are things going right now, like post hockey and everything with post hockey and just living life every day?
Yeah. Honestly, it's been a big shift. I started working a career in financial planning and stuff, and I think a lot of that just stemmed from the way that my career ended, with just injuries kind of piling on top of each other, which we may kind of get to later a little more. But I think it was just kind of a way for me to realize like I could still be involved in the game in some ways, but I didn't really want it to look like I originally had thought of, like coaching full time and things. And I think that's, it's kind of bittersweet, but at the same time, it was like closing a little bit of a chapter in my life. And I think I needed to do that in some ways. So things are going really well now, and I'm having a lot of fun. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you were the goalie coach for your old college before, after you ended your career, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
How is that, and just being a goalie coach there?
Honestly, just working with Buffalo State, it's like a great program, and they've really built up a lot since when I got there. We were kind of coming off the cusp of being a 500 program, and there were a lot of the guys before me really paved the way from just eating some losses decades ago and really kind of building a program into something that's you can really be proud of now. So it's really kind of cool to see the development there, and just from coaching staff to team culture and everything around it, it's really kind of improved. So it's fun to see it, and I still do I help them out time to time, but nothing full time at all. But it is nice to kind of relive some of the memories, I think, and just be like, yeah, this was spent 4 years here. It's kind of amazing how things change and then how things don't change, and I think that's kind of the cool thing too.
Yeah, and it's also cool to see the development, like you said, like especially like when like you have guys from like decades ago telling you about like the losses and just like how
Mhm.
every team's gonna go through that in the development period, and then just to see the success rate go from where they were to where they are now, and like you to be a part of it, especially going through that school for 4 years and then goalie coaching for a little bit there.
Right.
Like you must like really like to see the progress and how the school ends up with even now, just like not even goalie coaching, but like how they're doing like in the regular season and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but to start things off here, can you like give like the viewers a little background information on yourself, like when you started playing hockey, what made you become a goaltender, like when did you start playing hockey?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's kind of interesting. I always joke, I played every position on the ice before goalie, and I always joke that I kind of sucked at every other position, so I really was running out of options pretty quickly, and I had to get in net. But no, my dad had me on the ice when I was 17 months old, so barely walking around on skates. So I kind of was just as comfortable being on the ice as I was, walking, and played winger, center, defense. By the age of 6, I was playing in a spring league and really wanted to play goalie. I was I remember watching games with Brodeur, and I would like jump around like on the bed and like pretend to make saves like Brodeur was. And after that, my parents would actually had divorced. When I was younger than that, they're like, maybe we should really let him have a chance to do this. And we just pulled together all this like used gear, and like borrowed stuff from the programs and stuff. And it was a really absolutely fun like spring season. And the coach was like, hey, like you can do this, like you should let him keep playing. He kind of gets it more than other kids his age. So by the time I was 6, I became full-time goalie, joined a house league. Originally it was like, well, it was almost too boring. So the travel team in the same program organization, they needed another travel goalie. They needed 2 goalies, and they're like, he's clearly doing better than house, and it's probably boring for him. Like you wouldn't want him to be on our team. And that's where that started. So that was all my first year of just going right to travel hockey. Played for a few local organizations up in Buffalo, New York, or Western New York, I guess, really. And all the way through, it was kind of, in height, I played 15, 16, and 18U AAA. And it really started to get to a situation where my high school team was split in club. And my goal was never really actually like playing pro or anything, which is interesting because I think a lot of people like that is like the dream. Like I was watching Brodeur, but it really wasn't even, I had to play in NHL. I just wanted to be a goalie, and then it became playing high school hockey. I was, it wasn't like an actual varsity quote unquote sport. It was a split school and club team. And for me, so like my real drive was like, I just want to play NCAA college. Like, obviously everyone wants to do D1, obviously. But I was like, as long as it's not a club program, like that was my main goal. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what kind of drove me through getting to where I ended up getting to, was because it was like, I just wanted to play on a team that quote unquote mattered to like the school. Like that's all I cared about. And, that's kind of like the background of what motivated me to kind of keep moving forward. But it's been a pretty wild run. And, honestly, I was the kid at 18 years old that didn't know what junior hockey was. So it was, it was quite a wild ride, and we can kind of get into that more too, if you want to, but I think it's been an amazing start to something that will always obviously be a huge part of my life. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever seen like the YouTube video or Instagram video where like Patrick Waugh and Marty Brodeur is like imitating their moves? Were you doing that when you were little?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing that video because like they're both having fun, just imitating each other and just
Right.
having a blast out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But then you break into junior hockey, like you said, and like you didn't know what junior hockey was at 18. So like, what was it like to like find out about juniors and then go on a path to play junior hockey?
It's interesting because it was very just an only child, so just kind of like learning things. And as I found out, and at the 17, 18 years old, always been like an underdog, but always did very well, on most of the teams. And, always, as every goalie has, like, you have hiccups here and there. It's like bad games and, little slumps and things, but it wasn't ever like, wow, I should not be playing goalie. You know what I mean? Like I was doing well there. And I think the big thing was just not understanding how the game really works from a developmental side of just saying like juniors to go to play college. Like I didn't know that, because every other sport, obviously that's the only sport where you really had to do that. So that really wasn't known to me. And I've heard of juniors. I just didn't know it was like almost like a prerequisite to even play college, at least at a higher level. So I was calling college teams, finding out, and then they're like, well, are you planning to play juniors? I was like, well, I was playing AAA 18. And they're like, well, you got to play juniors if we're going to recruit you. I was like, okay, well, that was news to me. And then being 18, pretty much, not in the best shape, overweight at that time. Well, at this time too, I guess, but I was overweight then too. But kind of going through that process was, kind of enlightening, and just calling teams and just being like, I want to try out, blah, blah, blah. And getting into that process was, was a little bit nerve-wracking, but kind of exciting, because once I finally found a team I could play on, which was the maximum team in the Empire, it was a big step into not just like goalie development, but like personal development of like moving away from family and things like that too. Because being an only child, and I'm very, very close to all my family, that was a big thing of all things too. So it was a pretty wild experience, but it was fun too.
Yeah. So then you get on to Maximum Junior Hockey in the EMJHL, where you get to play in 23 games. Like, what was that first year like for you, especially like with that like development period that you saw, and like you going away to a billet family, and just like having to adjust to like everything that has to do with junior hockey, and it's a new lifestyle for you as well.
Absolutely. So the thing is that, and you might not have seen this, but I was actually, and this is another big part that I kind of missed about with juniors. I also didn't know anything about college eligibility. So like where the D1 eligibility clock starts as soon as you go full-time, and that doesn't stop, where D3 will stop if you're not going full-time. I did no idea about any of that. And I did pretty well in high school, and I had a very good scholarship to go to RIT. So I was actually, Maximum was in Rochester, and then I was going to RIT. I just didn't know any better. I started getting B's because of attendance, because I had to go leave for practice, and I guess I don't blame them, but at the same time, it was kind of annoying, because I'm like, I'm not doing this just to skip class, and all my work was like A work. So that experience, because I was actually technically dorming at RIT and then playing with Maximum, which is on the MCC campus too. So it's a little bit of a train wreck there. It ended up deciding to take a step back from college, because I knew college would always be there for me, and I knew that I was always interested in playing, going to college and everything too. So it wasn't like it was like, oh, I'm just going to live the dream forever and kind of have no background or a backup plan. It turned into at one time, I think I was building with one of the coaches very quickly when I left RIT, and then it also switched to I was part-time living at home, and I would commute out there and stay with some teammates and things like that too. So it was that wasn't necessarily to the plan to the T, because it was kind of a half-season decision to say, okay, well, if I'm going to focus on hockey, why would I spend all this extra time playing after high school if I'm not going to take it seriously? And so those handful of first games were, from the developmental side, on the goalie side, I mean, that's where playing a high school team with that we were not good. But that's putting it nicely. We were not good. So, and like the travel teams I'd play on, we were pretty good, but like we'd play teams that were a lot better than us too. And I think that's something where like you get the juniors, and it's like that's really your first baby version of what pro hockey does feel like, quite honestly. Because it's like you're not going to be on that team the whole year if you don't play well. You can get released, you can get cut, you can get traded. That was the first time really getting to play with teammates too that were from all over the place. I knew there was a kid, we had a Russian kid on the team. We had guys from across the country. We had a handful of local Buffalo, Rochester guys too. But it was that's something where really you start to see the camaraderie between people with different backgrounds, where, I mean, you do see that a little bit with like local hockey, but not to the extent that you really get with like juniors in college. Right. So that was really cool. And, obviously the pace picked up on the skills and everything too. And it was just a lot of learning and understanding that, sometimes you're not always going to be the starting goalie and the best goalie, but it's all about the long game too. And as long as you're putting in the time each day, like your time will come if you're not too busy thinking about the future. So
yeah, just like staying in that present time and just worrying about like where your feet are at. Like that's what a
exactly.
big thing that I've heard from a lot of people is where your feet at. Like they're in the present time, like you should be there as well. And like that's
Absolutely.
where like it'll take those steps to actually help your development. And like also for the development part, like you're playing on not a great team, like you said, and just like so like what are some of the big takeaways that you learned from those teams, especially like when you're not winning and you just gotta go with the flow and just be in the moment.
Right. And I think it's when you look at that too, it's when you're on a good team as a goalie, right? Like when you look at like what we do, like we have a very individual position in a team sport, right? So it's, we're never going to have success by ourselves, but the team's also not going to ever have success if we're not doing our job either, right? So I think that there really is a yin and yang there. And I think sometimes it's very easy, especially younger goalies or guys that, maybe they think they're too good to be where they are. So I've seen both sides where I think young goalies that just haven't matured enough yet, or the flip side of guys that are actually very highly talented pro guys where they come down a league and they think they're too good to be there. And all of a sudden it's just finger pointing. It's a blame game. It's never their fault, And I think so on either scenario, it really just comes into just, if you're doing your job to the best that you can, I mean, you're giving your team a chance to win, and you're taking care of, and from like coaching, when I actually coach goalies, it's like, if you're not letting pucks go under you and through your body, that's a pretty good first step. The next step is like, if you're not getting beat on straight shots, even if they're grade A's, and as long as you can see the puck and they're not getting tipped and you're not screened, you're stopping those pucks, like that's good two first steps. You know what I mean? The third part's like, if you're making saves that you really shouldn't even be making, then you're really doing everything that you really can't do. And I think like that's kind of like when you break it down, like it's so easy to make what we do very complicated. And I think sometimes when you just simplify it down, that shows that you really understand what's going on. And I think when you just break things down, like, because, sometimes you're out there, you're getting scored on 5 times in a game. Maybe 1 or 2 are really your fault, and they were weak. But I think sometimes when they're not, especially, and even if they are, you just hold your head up high. You don't like show that kind of frustration, because then you're letting it eat away at you. And I think those are some of the biggest things where, as much as winning is fun and I'd prefer it over losing any day, like the losing is what builds all the character that actually helps you grow into that next level goaltender. That if you're on a team where you have 10 shots a game and you don't do anything, at some point you're going to get to a league where or a team that doesn't happen, and you're going to get absolutely exposed. So I think, especially as you're young and developing, like being able to take losses as a winner is much more valuable to a young goalie, especially. So.
Yeah, and like when you do lose games, like you always learn more things about yourself, about the game. Like even winning, like you learn stuff, but like more so when you lose games, like you'll learn like maybe like what you did on this shot, what you did on that shot, and like just like the little parts, the little details that you may have missed that may have ended up with a puck in the back of your net. And just like it just helps you see that when you break it down. Like when you do break it down, like that's when you play your best games, when you keep everything simple and like don't overcommit, overthink about anything, and just stay there and just don't overcomplicate the position, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like just like when you're on a weaker team, like it also helps with development because you're getting pumped with shots. Like
oh yeah,
you
get a lot of
seeing
reps.
rubber every single night. So like you're able to just develop even more because of those. You're getting reps, and you're seeing a lot of shots.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then you go into after it makes them, you go into Buffalo with the Regals, Caledonia Corvairs, the Hackersville Hawks, and the Gouge, and then the NDJ CHL. So like, what were those years like for you?
So that was interesting. So I only played 2 real full seasons of juniors, right? So I think that was something where, and I'll get to this at the end of it, but it was something where I realized I wasn't going to be able to play for the Rochester, I can't even remember the league because the team's names kind of changed and the league names changed too in Rochester. But I wanted to play on the Empire team was a junior B team, and I wanted to play on the A team, except they also had 294 goalies. So it was going to be hard for them to kind of play all guys that would be graduating at the same time, which I totally get it. And they were already on the team, so they were doing well. And I was like, really wanted to make kind of either a step up in league or at least a lateral step to maybe a league that might have a little bit more visibility. And that's where I kind of saw if I was leaving RIT, I could go to ECC community college and everything and just kind of start getting some classes done and try to still kind of work on my academics because I cared about it, but at the same time, still get to play junior hockey and then save some money and live at home too. So it was a great step going to the Regals, but that's where, we were not a good team there, and I think that's something where once again in juniors, it's good and bad because it's like you do want to win because you obviously are trying to win championships, you're trying to move up, you're trying to develop, and you're trying to get recruited. The one thing that I think really helps goalies in general really is that even when you're not on a good team and you're trying to be, recruited, is a lot of teams or scouts go to watch, the highly skilled teams, probably the ones that you're playing against. And if you're out there just shutting them down as much as you can, even if you're still getting scored on 2, 3, 4, 5 times, the other 10 shots or saves that you made that should have been goals, all the scouts are seeing that too. Yeah. And I think that's something that you really get out in front of people that way easily as a goalie, even when you're not on a good team and you're in juniors and college and pro. And I think that was something that was exciting. And that's kind of what led me to getting the chance to be traded to Caledonia. I was traded right at the trade deadline. They were looking for a guy to go kind of as a second guy to go deep in the playoffs with in case something happened to their starter. And to me, I was like, well, I knew that we weren't going to be in playoffs at all. And I was like, that was something where I was like, well, that would be awesome. I can lock in more experience, go up and play in Canada, and obviously be in playoffs and get that experience too. And so I actually drove up and saw the team when they were leaving another game that they were playing just to meet them and be like, I want to play on your team if you would trade for me. And it was interesting. And I think that's what kind of happened where it kind of was like, well, this guy's willing to hustle like this to just try to be on a team. Like we want a guy like that, I think that was a very fun experience. And then going up and then I had to be carded on that C team because of imports. So that was a way to work around that kind of stuff. And, it was a good experience. Like everybody up there, typical Canadian stuff, like everyone's super nice. It was awesome. Yeah. I had an amazing billet family. That was the first real time I had a quote unquote billet family, and it was amazing. And I think it's just kind of I knew I was on not quote unquote borrowed time, but to me, it wasn't all about playing. I played more on the lower team. And then I was always like being called up for the other team. And I think that was something where it was all about experience and developing and really kind of checking your ego at the door, I think, and just being like, hey, it doesn't mean I have to be playing all these games. It's about the experience. And that was probably the most fun of that whole thing, is that we ended up winning the championship that year. And just being part of that was something that's always something that I'll remember, because it was such a small arena. And they packed it full in it's a small Canadian town, and it's like people came from everywhere to go to that game, and it was very cool. So that was awesome.
Yeah, so that you develop, you get those experiences, you win a championship in juniors, then you go on to college where you play 4 years at Buffalo State College. So like, what were those 4 years like for you, especially throughout your development and just gaining the necessary experience to maybe get to that pro level, especially that senior year where you played 24 games?
Great question. I think, for me, I kind of realized that because we talked about the eligibility before, right? So I kind of started that D1 clock, and I know a lot of kids that go, it's D1 or bust. It's like, well, the likelihood of playing, like just statistically, it's very difficult to do that, right? So I was looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint too, of saying, I had 1 more year left of junior eligibility. So if I wanted to age out, I could have. And then I also looked at, well, if I aged out, I'd only really have, I think I did the math back then, it was a while ago since I thought about it, I think it would have been like 2 years of D1 eligibility. And I'm like, nobody is going to recruit a goalie for 2 years of eligibility unless you're essentially like AHL quality goalie. You already have to be developed that far. And I knew quite well that I was a late bloomer and that just wasn't going to happen. So I'm like, it's silly for me to think about that. Why waste time aging out, where if I could get a respectable, I mean, like SUNYAC programs are extremely highly rated for D3 hockey. I think the NESCAC's up there a lot too. So knowing that it's like real goalies and, for NCAA, it's like you really go D1 or D3 because D2 is really kind of a mix and there's really not a ton of teams. So it's really mostly competitive. You go D1 and 3. So I was like, if I can get a job there and quote unquote job, but position on the team. And I think because we played when I was in Buffalo a lot, we played a lot at the Buff State rink. So I know their coach would watch some of those games and, he'd reach out and said that he had a spot opening and did the tour and everything. And I realized, that's honestly a probably better fit for me. Because for me, it's like development. If I lock in 4 more years of knowing I have a place to play hockey, I know I'll be able to kind of grow into that role and keep getting better. First year, I mean, I split the season with my goalie partner, and back then it's like I was very inconsistent. So it was I could have amazing games, I could have so-so games, and I could have pretty terrible games. And you never really knew what you were going to get. So I think at that point, I just having that inconsistency problem kept me from playing more games. And the next 2 years, my goalie partner was just crushing it. And like, he deserved to play as much as he was playing. Absolutely. So for that, like, that's tough too. You look at that, like as a goalie, like you get a taste of playing and then you barely play the next couple of years. And that was a lot of not just developing kind of in the background and trying to focus on my own game and getting better, but what it really made was me being a better teammate. And I think that's something that is so crucial to, guys and girls getting to the next level and keep continuing to play, is if you can accept not only how do you lose, right, when you're playing, but it's how do you win when you're not playing. And that's a much harder thing from a maturity standpoint to deal with, is to not be jealous and be like, oh, well, I could have been better, or I could have done that too, or, oh, the team played so well, like I would have won too. It's like, maybe, but none of that really matters. You know what I mean? If you can't be a team first attitude person, you're going to be a problem to your teammates and to the coaches. And then you're not going to, like, people won't keep you on teams, and I think that's huge. And I think I've really learned those things majorly. In my junior year, I had a major reason I couldn't play much was I had to get double hip surgeries. So they had to repair my labrums. I had to shave the femoral heads down in my hips, and I had double hip surgery 7 weeks apart, and that took me out for the whole second half of the season. And I actually graduated that year because I had those all the credits from before. So I really decided, like, I committed to coming here for 4 years, and I'm like, I want to see what happens. I don't want to be the guy that's, at the bar in 35 years saying, oh, I would have made it if it wasn't for my knees or hips or whatever, right? Whatever. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'll start grad school and I'll just see what happens. And I'll just, like, at least if I don't make it, I knew that I tried, and I won't ever regret that. Right. And I really just spent a lot of time working on, like, mindfulness, a lot of time on just making sure I rehab properly. I mean, I would be going to our training room like 2 hours a day for 5-6 days a week. Even when our team would be leaving to go on a road trip, it's like, well, I'd get in there on a Saturday and just work and do what I had to do for my hips. And I think it taught me a lot of discipline that year, because I didn't really have that. I was building at maturity, but not the discipline. And I think that's what really, it was kind of like a perfect storm. And I looked at, like, the hip surgeries as a little bit of a blessing in disguise, in the sense that it almost, like, it all came back together my last year. And I wasn't really doing it for myself. I was just like, I want my teammates to win championships, because some of the teams that we played in the championships, like I had a teammate in college that played on that team. So, like, I knew that my team got to have that experience, and he didn't. So for me, it was like, I want to do so well that hopefully I can give them that championship situation. And obviously that didn't work out, but it was a long process, and it would have been easy to try to transfer, when I wasn't playing and things like that. But some people do that. To me, it was, I'd rather stick it out and deal with more of the adversity. And even if it didn't go in my favor, then just try to just go the easiest way out and just say, like, oh, well, I'll just go play somewhere else. And I think, if things didn't work out, maybe I would have thought differently about that in the past, but it is what it is now. And I honestly, obviously, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you throughout college, you faced adversity, especially with that double hip surgery. So like, what was it like going through that time with double hip surgery? And like, I'm guessing it must have been like really hard on you and your mindset as well, because you want to play games, but you can't. So like, what was it like during that time, and just like trying to rehab and just get ready for your senior year?
Great. It's it's a great question again. Just, it was difficult, not just mental, emotional. I mean, obviously, like in the beginning, the pain is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So, and I lived on a second floor apartment. And so I was like crutching up there, and then I would like, trying to get around the campus even was really not fun, as you can imagine. So I think even that was just an inconvenience, but very minor inconvenience. And then the biggest thing is, and to be quite frank with you, I mean, it was pretty terrifying, to be honest, because to me, I mean, I was having hip issues since juniors, since like the end of high school, but it was mostly my knees. I had some knee problems. I had Osgood slaughter, which is like a tendon problem. So I just kind of thought that was just what it's like to be a goalie. Like I just thought, oh, it just hurts all the time, and my body's just destroying itself. So I thought that was kind of normal. And then it just kept getting to the point where I was in a practice in college, my junior year in the beginning half, and I pushed across the crease, and I like almost passed out. Like I almost blacked out. My vision went, I had stars in my vision from the pain in my hip. And that's when I started realizing like, okay, I clearly
Yeah.
can't just keep doing this and trying to get through it anymore. And I had talked to some of my coaches, and they're like, we understand you're battling, but like, if this happened in the game and if something happens, you can't make a save, or right, like that's putting the team at risk. And I'm like, no, I totally understand that. So then I realized like it really was a situation where I had to get it fixed if I wanted to play. And it was pretty it was pretty scary, because the last time I remember getting off, it was my last practice, because I was just kind of out there trying to help the guys just be in the net.
Yeah.
So at least they had someone to shoot on, right? And I could barely move around. But I remember like I was sobbing the last time I got off the ice there, because, for as far as I knew, that could have been the last time I ever played hockey. Right. So like
Yeah.
it was awful. And I think it was something where there's a lot of, on the mindfulness side, of just like surrendering to like what we don't know, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of just during that process was just so single focused on, yeah, I was paying attention to classes and everything else, but I wasn't out there like tearing it up and partying or anything. You know what I mean? It was really like, this is why I'm still doing this, because otherwise I would just have quit hockey if I really
Yeah.
didn't want to come back, And I think it was probably the most focused and disciplined I've ever been in my entire life. And I think that itself was kind of an eye-opening experience of just showing kind of what any human can do when they don't let anything else get in their way. And I just knew that no one was going to stop me at that point. Like I was just too focused. And I think that was a very powerful part of my life. So
Yeah, absolutely. So then you get through that, you go on your senior year where you play 24 games, and then you finally get a look at playing professional hockey. It's like, how did that come up with pro hockey after your grad year? And that's where you signed in Evansville that first year, right?
right, yeah. So it was
Yeah. So like, what was it like? What was that process like to sign in Evansville?
it was pretty exciting. It was pretty wild, honestly, man. It was so during the season, I wasn't focused on pro at all. Like kind of like I said, like I just wanted to have success with my
Yeah.
team, with my teammates, with like the guys that I've known for years, the guys that I just met that year that were freshmen and everything. And I think for me, it was trying to be a leader, by example. And like I was never a big talker, never a big like speech guy, but like if I just do the things the right way, hopefully that the guys will see that. You know what I mean? That's what I tried to do. I don't know if it worked or not, but that's what I tried to do. And I think for me, it was just going through that season. It wasn't until like our J term, so like right in between the semesters, where I had talked to, we were having a pretty good year so far at that point, and I was playing quite a bit after kind of rocky start, where it was kind of like my first real games in basically like a year.
Yeah.
And first time really real competitiveness after the surgery. So I didn't really know what was happening. So it was a shaky start. And I was kind of concerned that maybe I wouldn't be playing. And getting into the season, I was like right in the halfway point. I did bring it up to one of my coaches, and I was like, I'm not going to be focused on this, but I would love to keep playing after the season's over. And I was just like, if you don't mind helping, whatever, because that's, I don't want it. Like, I'm never going to waste my time trying to like get recruited, and it wasn't about that. So we ended up, keep playing through the year, blah, 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 blah. And getting to the end of the season, semifinal game against Geneseo, I get pulled in the second period in my last college game, which I think also is kind of puts my brain in a pretzel a little bit, and obviously wasn't happy about it. But 13 seconds later, I'm cheering on the team because at the end of the day, I still want us to win the game, right? So I think that's something where like that was an absolute roller coaster right at the end of my college career of getting this far, having that happen, and then basically I think it was a day or two later after we lost, Evansville and Macon called me. They both called me about going down to their team, and one of my teammates had played at Macon, and I thought, well, let's see how Evansville is, I guess, so I went down there, and one of probably the most amazing experiences of my life, like having that conversation like on a phone is about getting to go pro. And I think that was just amazing, really.
Yeah, so then you get to Evansville and you get to play in 5 games the rest of the season, where you had a 2.75 goals against average, and you play in 2 playoff games as well. So what was that first taste of pro hockey like, and the emotions of just being there and just being a professional now?
I think, and that's, and you look at it, like when I look back at it, I guess, it feels like it's so much when it's happening, and I think one of my coaches in college said this the best, and he explained it because we had 2 guys before me that were goalies at Buff State go and play pro. So like I've kind of seen, how my goalie partner was, on and off the ice, and he saw his goalie partner before that, how he was on and off the ice. And it was like, I think one of my post-college coaches, he said it the best, where he's, you become a pro before you go pro. You know what I mean? It's not about, you don't become a pro just because you get paid now or anything like that. It's you're a pro because of the way that you act, the way that you treat your body and your game, and how you perform, how you handle fans and teammates and coaches and other relationships and everything else outside of in life. And I think that was probably the best, because it really became true when I look back at that now, of saying, wow, like it's it was pretty wild experience. And now we have these huge arenas that I'm playing in, and there's fans, and fans come up to you after, and then the first time I'm signing autographs, it's like, it's mind-boggling. And it is really crazy. And I look at that, and from the skill, it's like it was a step up a little bit, because there were some guys that were kind of like former coach guys that were down and things like that. So like some of the speed picked up, some of the shooting ability definitely picked up, and the strength overall, because we're talking about definitely more grown men than like college. And even in college, we're still obviously all pretty older anyway. So it was kind of an experience, and the traveling and seeing the teams, and it was pretty surreal, because it was getting your first pro stall, the first pro win. Before the first game that I started, it was at home in Evansville, and I remember I think it was one of the assistant captains, like right before we walked out for the game, he's like, "Hey, you nervous?" And I like laughed, and I was like, it honestly broke the ice so well that like it helped me just kind of like acknowledge that I was like excited, but I wasn't like scared. And winning the first start that I had, I think we won 3 straight, and then had a loss in like an overtime loss in regular season. And it was wild. And then kind of seeing like the playoffs, at some point hockey all really does become very similar. I think once you hit juniors, it's all quite the same. It's not like when you're a kid and all of a sudden you can't check and now you can check. It's like things become the same. It's just the room for error and the margins for error get a lot tighter. And you just have to be better all the time. And that consistency level, it gets ramped up every time. So
yeah, for sure. You should have been like Jordan Bennington's "Do I Look Nervous?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but then you go play those 5 games and 2 playoff games as well. Like what was playoff hockey like, especially since it was like your first taste of professional playoff hockey, and like how playoffs are in any league, like they ramp up compared to the regular season.
Yeah, the emotions get up there a lot, and it gets a lot more intense. And when I was in those games, we were not in our home arena, we were in Macon at that point. And they were a very strong team that year. And their crowd, like the way the arena is, and I ended up playing Macon and in Macon the next year, but like their opposing team's net is basically they have stands like right over the goalie. So like you have fans just screaming at you, and it's I mean it's fun. I love that stuff. I absolutely love it. But it was definitely the first time where, you know, pro hockey is like what I kind of would call it, like juniors on steroids. Like it's like you, once again, you're not safe. You're not just going to be on this team forever. You have to perform. And at the same time, it's not like these fluffy college rules either. Like it's a lot more cutthroat. It's a lot more intense. You know, people can say a lot more to you where you're not going to get a penalty for it. You know what I mean? So it's it was a lot of fun. And I mean, we didn't win those games, and it was just a lot of adversity early in the beginning where, you know, it wasn't some magical rainbows and fairy tale stuff where like, oh, I go play pro and all of a sudden we win a championship. You know what I mean? It was all like, yeah, I had some success, but it was also a good gut punch too of saying, this is reality now. Like you got to be on your game and you got to keep getting better and don't think you're ever too good, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So then the following year, you spend the season with 3 teams, 2 in the SB and 1 in the coast. So you began the year in Evansville with the Thunderbolts before getting traded to the Macon Mayhem, where you played in 27 games, going 11-11. So like, what was that, since it was your first official pro year, and like, what was the opportunity like to get to play in Macon for the Mayhem?
Yeah, it was, you know, so I actually started that season. I was protected by Evansville, and the coach had gone up to the coast. So I was protected by Evansville, and I was planning to go back. I had main camp actually in the Adirondack Thunder, which I loved playing there. And that was an amazing experience there. And it's too bad it didn't work out there because that was like a team culture I really wanted to be a part of. And so coming back down, went to the SP with our new coach, traveled to our first game. I think we lost in overtime or something, or shootout. And, you know, on the bus right after that, I had a call to go to Atlanta and take a call up there. And I really wanted to get that experience in. And I knew it was kind of early in the season. So I felt badly to do that. But, you know, getting on a coast roster and not just in main camp, right, where generally, you know, D3 undrafted guy, like maybe you're filling a spot for a little bit until a guy comes back down from the whatever. Yeah. And I think for me, it's like, well, if I can be actually contracted on a coast contract, like that's a part of experience, right? And I'm building that. And I was there for, you know, a week and a half, didn't get games. We went 0-4, but the guy that was playing, that was on the team, that was backing up a lot. I mean, he was giving our team every chance to win. And like, I couldn't blame it. And quite honestly, something changed when I went there where I was almost too excited. I really didn't play that well. And to be honest, like I really didn't play that well. And I didn't really think, honestly, after looking back at it, like I didn't deserve to really get games. Like it would have been nice to at least get one of those 4 just to say I got a game. But I don't see that it was a big deal because I didn't really deserve it. And I think after that, I went back to Evansville for a second, got released. Or actually, I don't think I ever got technically signed again. Went home for 10 days, I think it was, or so. And that's when I got a call. I was reaching out to teams, and Macon had called me, and that they were looking for a guy for a long term, I think. And I was like, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to really get games played as a rookie goalie, like a rookie player anywhere, but definitely a goalie. It's like you need to have those GPs in order to be taken seriously. And, you know, it was a great spot for me to kind of get in there and kind of build a lot of, you know, rapport with players and fans too. And that was an amazing experience too. And playing somewhere for so long in one season was a lot of fun for me because it kind of started to feel like home, even though it was, you know, 16-hour drive away or whatever it was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you go up to the ECHL, you go down to the SPHL, like you said. Like, what are some of the things that you learned through your first official year pro that you're able to bring up to the coast and learn from the coast, and then bring back down to the SP to win more games and just develop at a good rate?
I think the biggest thing is it comes down to whether the guys are younger or older in the coast. It was just a whole different level of maturity. It really, and like professionalism. It's like people were there to like execute, and they knew they had to execute. There were guys on 2-way AHL deals, you know, and I learned kind of sometimes where you see a little bit more of the attitudes of where they think they're too good to be there, but yet, you know, maybe they're still -1 or 2 in a game. And I'm like, I don't understand that too much, but whatever. Yeah. And I think then you look at the other side where there's guys that, like my goalie partner at the time, I think he'd spent 3-4 years grinding in the SP, and he was being contracted on a coast for the whole year. And I'm like, that just shows me like how much work I had ahead of me at that time to be able to make it to the coast and stick. And I think that goal, he played D1 too. So it's like, it's no joke. Like, it's very difficult to move up and stick in those leagues. And so it's amazing that, and I have a ton of respect for those guys that, either grinded through like SP stuff or got in there at the right time and just crushed it and performed, because it's a game-changing experience when you get to stick in the coast. And obviously the lifestyle kind of increases a little bit too, from rookie pay and just per diem and where you get to live and how you're treated. So there's a lot of things that were just like, wow, this is awesome. And a lot of things where it's like, it's not some magical thing either, where it's like you still have to work even harder. Honestly, you get up one level, it doesn't get any easier. It never gets easier. And I think that was the thing I really had to learn, which was, I think, the most important thing was, it's not a cakewalk just because you get to go play on this team. It's like, if anything, you have to work twice as hard now if you want to stay there, so.
Yeah, those are great learning experiences to learn from, especially going into that next year where it would be your final year of pro hockey, but you played in the Erste Liga for 6 games with HK Budapest. And then you came back over to North America and played for Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs. Like, what was that year like? And just like the craziness from going over to Budapest, then coming back to North America.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a gong show, to be honest. So big part of that was I started looking at things as with the SP as being, if I knew how hard it would be to move up in the East or North America and stay there, I'm like, maybe instead of doing that, I could try to take my career a different route and start trying to move top leagues that I could. So, Hungary is not a huge hockey country, but being in their top league would be very similar to maybe like a France 2 type of league, which is very respectable. So I was starting to look at things of like, if I could start kind of climbing the ladder in Europe, what would that look like for my career? I could get paid, essentially like low cost money too. So it's like, it's still financially improvement. I'm getting to travel essentially for free across the world, which was amazing. And looking at it that way, I was like, this isn't such a bad thing. It's not like I need to make it to the NHL, but I want to play as long as I can. And it needs to be competitive and I need to be getting better. I never wanted to go play quote unquote pro, but have it be a lower level of skill, or have it be kind of where I'm just dwindling out and burning out because it's not challenging me enough. So going over there, that's when my spine got really bad. So I had, herniated disc, bulging discs, early onset, like arthritis, stenosis through every disc in my lumbar and thoracic. And it was a train wreck. The team didn't really want to help me get better. And it was just not a good situation. So we ended up doing a mutual release after 3 months. Spent like 2 more weeks there, maybe just kind of like chilling out, trying to figure out if I could play anywhere in Europe before I actually crossed the ocean again. And then came back here and I was like, maybe it was just a healthcare situation and the team not helping me try to get better. And I was like, it's got to be better if I'm here. So immediately I was trying to find teams. I had a chance to go to Roanoke, spent a month and a half with them. And once again, probably made one of the hardest decisions of my entire life, where after Christmas, I'd gone to the coach and basically, in the office before practice, I was like tearing up. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not getting better. My back's always a problem. I'm trying to survive practices. I can't even get better anymore, and I'm like, even in games, I'm at best 60% of my actual potential at best. And I'm like, I was having to, basically nurse myself through that. And I'm like, this isn't helping me. I can't develop, and I'm not giving the team the best that I want to give the team. And so I asked basically to go home, and so we did that. So basically after my last game on the 29th in Peoria, Illinois, I think it was, of December 2019, I think that's when it was. And came back home and I drove back to Buffalo and I rehabbed my spine, and realized after that as I started getting on the ice in the summer, and like even a morning skate at a local rink by myself with a couple shooters, like all of a sudden that night, my spine, like it feels like somebody put like a hot iron to my back. And I'm like, this is just it's not going to work like this anymore, I think. And that's where I finally had to shut it down. But I think the whole experience of, going to see Europe, getting to play hockey, getting paid to play hockey over in Europe, getting to learn a bit of the language, like it was an amazing experience. It's just, unfortunately, the health situation really had to put things in perspective for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was at that game in Peoria when it was your last game, because I remember you were goalie for that
Oh,
game.
wow.
Yeah, and you played pretty good that game too.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And I mean, like, there were a couple things that were like, oh, geez, like, how did that go in? But honestly, that was just knowing how I really should feel and everything. It was one of those
Yeah.
things where it was just like, this isn't in the cards, I think, anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've like one more question for you before we wrap things up here.
Sure.
So do you have any tips for goaltenders looking to get to that next level?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is in a day of age of, social media. So like when I was younger, it was just kind of happening, and and now you can consume so much information, you can consume so much trash too. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing, is like, never be comparing yourself to what other guys or girls are doing, because that's not your story. And I think the biggest thing is you have to just know that if you're serious about something, one, it's not going to be easy, but that if you're really actually going to work for it, you got to be, one, hold yourself accountable to doing it. Two, find people that you can trust that are going to help build you up, right? So like your friend group, your teammates, your coaches, your mentors, they have to be aligned with what you're trying to do. And I think that's the people you surround yourself with are either really going to help you or they're going to hinder you. And as you're getting through those scenarios, it's, you are really writing your own story. And I think that's something where don't let anyone kind of pull that away from you or make you feel like you can't do it. And that's not to be all, hokey and everything's going to be perfect in life. I think that's something where the reason I say it like that is because there are going to be scenarios where you might even doubt yourself. You know what I mean? And I think the biggest thing is every time you're that scared and you want to quit, everything that you wanted is like 2 more steps past that fear. And I think that's the biggest thing. So like I look at it, my surgeries, getting cut from teams in pro, not knowing if I'm going to ever get another team, all these things are just, it's so easy to just want to quit because you're like, I'm scared of this. I'm scared of what people will think. I'm scared of all that stuff. And I think if you can just stay true to why you're doing this and like what drives you, that will push you through all that fear. And then you're going to experience life experiences, success, etc., all that stuff because you stayed true to what you were doing. So I think that's it.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and like you could learn so much from that. And like I appreciate you giving that tip. But Ian, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. And I want to wish you the best of luck with everything going forward. And I'm glad we're able to get this in finally.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and sorry for being so hard to pin down, but I'm glad we got to talk, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all that matters at the end of the day, is that we're able to do this and have some fun.
Awesome. All right, thanks.